Revising for others. We are at the tail end of the revision series. If you haven't seen the revision series, I have created a playlist. You can go to my channel and click on the revision series playlist and start from the beginning, which will help explain everything you need to know about revision and all of the techniques that I use in my revision practice, because revision is by far one of the most powerful techniques. I think it gets overlooked a lot. I think it's very much underrated. However, thanks to this series, I know a lot of you are enjoying revision and some of you are sending me your success stories. And I also just want to say, please do send your success stories in, because after I have finished this series, I am going to share some of your revision success stories. So please do send me an email with those. That would be appreciated. And of course, that helps to inspire others. So speaking of others, today we are revising for them, because everyone is you pushed out, reflecting you back, and no one to change but self. These are the foundational principles of law of assumption. Keeping in mind that these are all just offerings. You don't have to do any of this. These are just offerings that you can do. And I would just invite you to give them a go and see how they land in you and see how they get reflected back in your reality. And if it works for you, great. If not, well, you haven't lost anything. So that is what we are doing today. My name is Hedley and I'm a law of assumption coach, passionate about making these teachings as practical as possible so that you can apply them to your reality and get results so fast and in such a way that it makes for such a great story. And I really love your success stories, so please do share them. If you'd like to know more about me or my offerings, you'll find all of those details in the box below this video or at my website, youaretheone.com.au. I have coaching, I have courses, and I have my book, I Am Money. All of those details you'll find there. And if you feel inclined, please do subscribe to my channel, and let's get into it. I was talking to a friend of mine the other day and we were talking about revision, and I was just saying how much I love it and how I've been doing this revision series. And he was kind of questioning this idea of revision, because he was saying that, well, you know I've made decisions that I can look back on and kind of wish I hadn't have made, but that those decisions had resulted in really good things in his life. For example, we were talking about relationships and how even though he could look back on a relationship and know that that was not the relationship for him, that relationship produced children that he obviously loved and was very grateful for. It got me thinking about one of the biggest misconceptions of revision, and one of the reasons that stops people from actually engaging in this practice is because there's this misconception that if you revise the past, you will lose what has come from that past. And that is not the case. You cannot lose anything or anyone from revision, because what you're doing is you're actually expanding your awareness to other potential timelines in response to that past event. For example, you met somebody and you got together and then you had children, and then you kind of ended up hating each other and got divorced, and you look back on that and you're like, oh, well, I wish I hadn't have been with that person, but I'm also glad that I was, because we created these beautiful children from that relationship. So when you revise something like that, you are not losing what you've gained from that timeline. You can't lose anything. You can't even lose the timeline that you're revising, because all creation is finished, all potentials exist and will continue to exist whether you're on them or not. So when you revise, what you're saying is, this is actually what happened, but I'm aware of another potential of what happened. So now you have two potentials of what happened. You have the potential of what happened and you have the revised potential of what happened. And you get to keep the benefits of both of those potentials. So you keep what you've gained from that original potential, and you also gain what you have since revised in that new potential. So I just wanted to make that point, because I think it is a misconception that keeps people kind of in a state of fear or anxiety or nervousness about revising, because they were like, well, yeah, I didn't like that, but I kind of got this out of it and I don't want to lose that. You cannot lose anything. You can only gain from revision. Again, I would encourage you to go back to the beginning of the revision series, which explains more and provides more context so that you can really enjoy this practice and enjoy the benefits from it, free of fear that it's somehow going to mess up what you've already created in your reality and that you want to keep. So once you've really mastered this idea of revising your own past, you can start to play with the possibility of revising somebody else's past that you are aware of. So for example, you might have somebody who is in your life, a loved one, perhaps a parent or a sibling or a child or a grandparent, anyone who is in your reality, and you know that they've been through something in their past and that you can see the impact of that in their reality today. And it kind of pains you because you know how easy it could be to recreate that, to rewrite that story and experience a different possibility. But perhaps they're not into law of assumption, they're not open to this, they don't want to hear it, and they don't want anything to do with it. And that is fine. And I would always suggest never try convincing anyone of this stuff. You don't need to anyway, by the way, because everyone is you pushed out, and you can do everything that you feel you need to do in your wonderful human imagination. That is what it's for. Your imagination is infinite and therefore has infinite capacity to change what you are observing in your reality. Consciousness is the one and only reality, and your reality, including everyone in it, is the reflection of your consciousness. So if you are revising somebody else's past or somebody else's trauma in their favor, you can do it in your consciousness and you don't have to say a word to them. And in fact, I would advise you not to. Keep everything to yourself unless you have permission from the other person to share it. I am constantly doing this work in my imagination, and I'm not telling people what I'm doing. Sometimes I do if I feel it's appropriate. So I want to start by sharing a story of how I revised something that happened to my dad when he was young. Of course, I'm not even an idea at this point. So my father died in 2009, and I did this revision just last year, I think it was, or this year, I can't actually remember. But anyway, I did this just within the last year. As I was going through this process and really understanding my relationship with my dad and really revising a lot of those old traumas, on one occasion it became very clear that my dad had been abused when he was a little boy. And I didn't have any other information other than the knowing that something had happened. And then I did a little bit of investigation work and found that the school that he went to as a young boy was ground zero for abuse of young boys in the 50s and 60s. And so I just knew in some way that something had happened to him when he was attending that school. That event affected my dad in ways that then impacted on me, and it is my belief that it caused the cancer that he then died from in 2009. I didn't know this at the time, but it made a lot of sense. So when I became aware of that, I just thought to myself, if I'm aware of it, I can revise it. So I sat myself down. This didn't take a lot of time. This is really easy stuff. And I just went into my imagination and I simply imagined myself today walking into the school where my dad went as a young boy. Keep in mind, I've never been to this school. I don't know what this school looks like. And I just called my dad's name, and this boy stood up and came to the front, and I took him by the hand and I took him out of the classroom, and then I took him out of the school. And then what I did was I took him to his parents' house. And I said to his parents, this young boy is a very important person because he is going to be my father. And it's really important that he grows up to be a grounded, whole, loving person. And it's really important that you take extra good care of him and you enroll him in another school where he is going to be safe from what is going on at the school that he's currently at. So I gave his parents a bit of a talking to, and I gave him to his parents, and I then left. That's all I did. Everything is happening now. There's no time. So you can go in and revise for people who were children before you were even alive. Like, there's just no limits to this. There's no limits to your imagination. By me going and doing that, I have interrupted the timeline of events. Keep in mind, we're not losing anything from the revised timeline. We're actually gaining more by choosing a better, more improved timeline. So my dad doesn't lose anything from that timeline. In fact, he gains more of himself from that improved timeline that I have since chosen, which is that he went to another school and that his parents kept a good eye on him and they took care of him and he grew up in a really sound and grounded way. I also did this for my mum because my mum had a similar story. So I actually, as the current version of myself, imagined going into these memories that I'm aware that my parents had when they were little, and I took them by the hand, I took them out of those memories and I took them to their parents and I gave them all a talking to and I said, you guys, these people are very important people because they're going to be my parents and I need them to be really whole and complete and healthy people so that I can have the opportunity to grow up as a whole and healthy person myself. All I can say about the results of doing that is it just felt good. It felt empowering, it felt positive, it felt healthy, a feeling of wholeness, a feeling of peace, a feeling that things were the way they needed to be rather than the way they had been. Now, if you're not aware of what may have happened with this person, the other way you can revise for others is to simply go into your imagination and to imagine that person, imagine that loved one, meeting their younger self. So you're kind of doing inner child work on the person, basically. So you're seeing that person meeting their little one and bringing their little one in and cuddling them and holding on to them. So you're seeing them with their little one. A lot of these events that happened, they happened when we were young. And a lot of times we may not know what exactly happened, and we certainly may not know what happened for somebody else. And so simply by seeing that person with their little one, giving their little one a hug, seeing them talking lovingly to them, you can actually do the inner child work on somebody who is in your reality. And by seeing them with their little one, their inner child, that actually creates the state of healing within them. We have no control over how reality reflects this back, but this kind of work, it can be a really loving thing to do without saying anything or without trying to convince anyone to go to therapy or, do this course or read that book. We don't have to convince anyone to do anything because you can go into your imagination and simply do it, and it doesn't take a lot of time. So if you have parents or if you have grandparents that went through something difficult or challenging or traumatic when they were children, you can go into your imagination and see it differently for them. And that is one of the most wonderful, loving gifts to give another. And then knowing that reality is your loyal and faithful servant and is already reorganizing itself to reflect it back in ways we know not of. So consciousness is the one and only reality, and whatever you are doing in consciousness must be reflected back in reality, including your revisions for others. And just trust your intuition with this one. You don't have to know the details of things. Just hold the intention that you are wanting to revise this situation for this person so that it is more favorable for them, and perhaps that will end up being more favorable for you. And just trust that your imagination with that intention will guide you into the appropriate scene. So play with that one, and I'm just going to figure out if there is another video on this revision series. There's one that I have in mind. I'm not sure if I'm going to do it yet. So let's see how this week unfolds. Let me know your comments in the box if you are enjoying the series. And also if you are experiencing any success stories, please do email them through and I will do a video on your success stories with revision. And then we will be done and dusted with the revision series and moving on to something else. So have a wonderful week, and I will look forward to seeing you in the next video. Bye.